voice that only comes around once in a lifetime. That's how Whitney Houston's talent was so often described.
And it's just so true, isn't it?
It really is. Her voice, it wasn't just entertainment. It literally opened doors for so many artists who came after her.
Yeah.
Just, well, a force of nature.
Definitely.
So today on the deep dive, we're not just going to, rehash the headlines or the tabloid stuff that unfortunately became part of her story.
Right.
We want to dive deep, really get into the core of Whitney Houston's journey, from her beginnings in New Jersey right through to her heartbreaking end.
And we'll be using factual accounts like information from a recent YouTube documentary transcript to really try and understand what shapes this just extraordinary life.
Exactly.
Yeah, our goal here for this deep dive is really to move past just a simple timeline. We want to pull out the crucial insights, into her life, her massive career, and all those complex forces that guided her path.
We want to offer you, the listener, a clear picture, kind of connect the dots without, getting bogged down in every single detail.
Precisely. Clarity and understanding.
Okay, so to really get Whitney, you got to go right back, right to the start.
Uh-huh.
She was born Whitney Elizabeth Houston, August 9th, 1963, in Newark, New Jersey. Her dad, John R. Houston, he later managed her production company.
Right.
And her mother was the amazing gospel singer Cissy Houston. So, from day one, she was just surrounded by music.
It's actually kind of staggering when you think about the talent around her as a kid. It wasn't just her mom being a singer.
Yeah.
You had Aretha Franklin as, a godmother figure. Dionne Warwick was a relative. She was around gospel stars like Bebe and CeCe Winans all the time.
Wow.
It wasn't just hearing music. It was like living inside a masterclass from birth.
And Cissy Houston, she wasn't just, some local singer. She had this incredible career herself.
Mm-hmm.
Sang backup for Elvis, Luther Vandross.
Yeah.
Even on Breaking Up is hard to do. Not many people know that.
Right. It's amazing.
And while maybe her solo stuff didn't hit Whitney's level, Cissy was, fiercely dedicated to Whitney's talent.
Mm-hmm.
She instilled this incredible discipline.
That phrase, from the mind, the body, and most importantly, the heart, that was Cissy's training philosophy.
You can absolutely hear that foundation in Whitney's singing, can't you?
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
And that deep early grounding in gospel, that's just fundamental. It wasn't just a style she sang.
No, it was deeper.
It was like the language of her soul, wasn't it?
Mm.
The passion, the emotion, those amazing vocal runs, that's all gospel. And she just wove it into pop and R&B so seamlessly.
And even her close friends throughout her life, people like Kim Burrell, the Winans, they were all church people. It shows how important faith and that community was.
Absolutely.
It's really powerful when you think about her first and last songs, too.
Yeah.
Age 11, she sang Guide Me, O Thy Great Jehovah at school.
Mm-hmm.
And then just before she died, the last song she sang was Jesus Loves Me.
Wow. Both hymns.
Yeah, it just shows that spiritual thread running through everything. But her home life, it wasn't always smooth sailing, was it? Her parents' divorce really hit her hard.
Right. This is where you start to see some cracks, maybe. Her dad, John, was apparently quite jealous.
Mm-hmm.
He suspected Cissy was cheating, even tapped the phone, apparently, and found out she was involved with their church minister.
Oh, wow. In the church.
Yeah, and that was huge for Whitney because the church was her safe space, her sanctuary. So that betrayal right there in her safe space really shook her sense of security.
That makes sense. It explains a lot that at 18, she decided to leave home and didn't even tell her mom where she was going.
Right. She moved in with her best friend, Robin Crawford, who she knew from Catholic school.
And around the same time, she started dipping her toes into modeling.
Exactly. And she made waves there, too. First Black woman on the cover of 17 magazine in the U.S.
That's huge.
It really was. It showed off her, stunning looks alongside that voice people were starting to notice. She had the whole package.
But music was always the main thing, right? She started singing backup for her mom.
Yeah, learning the ropes.
And then that key moment where Cissy apparently pretended to be sick.
Huh. Yeah, she kind of tricked her into singing lead, didn't she?
Totally. Pushed her out front.
Yeah.
Whitney nailed her mom's set.
Yeah.
And that really kicked off her solo journey.
And then, 1983, Clive Davis. New York nightclub.
The legendary moment.
What's amazing is how immediate Clive's belief was. Signed her to Arista right there.
Just like that.
But also his patience. He knew he had something special, so he took his time, found the right songs, the right producers, Jermaine Jackson, Narada, Michael Walden, Kashif. A killer lineup.
That careful development was definitely key.
For sure.
Now, early on, there were some whispers, weren't there, about nepotism? because of Sissy and Dionne Warwick?
Yeah, there was some talk, but Whitney herself addressed it. She basically said, yeah, maybe family opened a door or two initially,
Right.
but ultimately it was her talent, her God-given talent, as she put it, that kept her there. She felt she had to prove it on her own terms.
And boy, did she ever.
Unequivocally. The looks, the charisma, and that voice, just unbelievable.
And when Saving All My Love for You came out, that changed things, didn't it? Not just for her.
Oh, massively. It signaled a whole new era for Black female artists, really. Before Whitney, you had Diana Ross' amazing style, presence.
But maybe not that raw vocal power.
Exactly. Whitney was like the new Diana Ross, but with this just breathtaking voice. And then came MTV.
Right, which was still very, very white rock oriented back then.
Totally. I mean, even Michael Jackson had to fight for airplay initially. So when How Will I Know, her third U.S. single hit #1, and that colorful video was all over MTV, that was huge.
It cemented her in the mainstream.
Absolutely. A massive step for visibility for young African-American women on that channel.
And that early run was just insane. 7 American Music Awards in like 2 years. A Grammy, MTV Award.
Her first album is still seen as this landmark by Rolling Stone, The Rock Hall.
She absolutely paved the way for Janet Jackson, Anita Baker, or others to break through in that same way.
Yeah, open those doors wide open.
And then, I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me. Just pure joy, pure energy. Another MTV smash.
What stands out most for you from that early explosion?
Honestly, just the sheer exuberance. You know, Arlene Phillips, the choreographer, she said Whitney was kind of gangly and shy at first.
Really?
Yeah, but the second she sang and moved, boom, star power. And the charts, 7 #1s in a row.
Beating the Beatles and the Bee Gees. That's unbelievable.
She really did become America's sweetheart. But she was more than just pop charts, wasn't she? She used her voice for causes, too.
Yeah, that's a really important point that sometimes gets lost. She spoke out about things she cared about, like Nelson Mandela and fighting apartheid in South Africa.
The Wembley concert in '88.
Exactly, which was watched by, like, everyone globally.
Yeah.
And they read out that message from Mandela himself.
Acknowledging her music, reaching him in prison on Robben Island. That's powerful.
Incredibly powerful. And later that year, she did One Moment in Time for the Seoul Olympics, another inspirational moment.
But even with all this incredible success, the whispers started about her personal life, especially her closeness with Robin Crawford.
Yeah, and you have to remember the context, right? The Reagan-Bush era, very conservative. Whitney was the first Black female superstar on that mainstream level.
So her team was worried.
Understandably. Any hint of, well, nonconformity regarding her sexuality could have been disastrous for that carefully built image. But inside the industry, everyone knew she and Robin were incredibly close, inseparable since high school.
And the documentary mentions, maybe cognitive dissonance playing a role, given her religious upbringing.
That's a possibility, yeah. That discomfort when your private life maybe doesn't align with your public image or your ingrained beliefs, holding conflicting ideas.
Especially under that kind of spotlight.
Exactly. The pressure must have been immense. Some people even wonder if things might have been different later, if she'd felt freer to just be herself back then. But regardless, Robin clearly had this unique influence. People said she was the only one who could really get through to Whitney sometimes.
But the management, the family, they reportedly weren't happy about that influence.
No, apparently they felt Robin had too much sway and actively tried to push her away. Whitney apparently felt like her control was being undermined.
And at the same time, some critics started questioning her music's direction.
Yeah, the whole selling out accusation. That her records were too polished, not soulful enough compared to her live shows.
Which probably led to the I'm Your Baby Tonight album.
Seems likely. She brought in people like Luther Vandross, L.A. Reid, Babyface, aiming for a grittier, more R&B sound. It was still successful, but it showed she was maybe listening to those critiques.
And then 1991, the Gulf War, Super Bowl XXV, the national anthem.
Oh, just legendary. That performance went way beyond football, didn't it?
Totally. It became this unifying moment for the country with people worried about family overseas. Her version wasn't just technically flawless.
It was pure emotion, pride, patriotism. It's still the gold standard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hearing it even now, chills. It just cemented her as, like, America's daughter.
For sure.
So, late 80s, she'd been linked with a few guys, but then came the 1989 Soul Train Awards. And she met Bobby Brown.
Yeah, and that meeting really set the stage for, well, a lot of love, but also a lot of turmoil.
The public reaction at first was kind of like, huh.
Them.
Totally. Bewilderment, concern. Bobby had this bad boy thing going on, already had kids, a history of difficult relationships. It seemed like such an odd match.
Polar opposites, publicly anyway.
Right. But people close to them said the connection was real deep.
Apparently, he treated her like a normal person, which she maybe didn't get much.
Yeah, she reportedly said guys were often intimidated, too careful around her. Bobbi was respectful but confident. She liked that.
She said all he knew she needed was love. There was definitely chemistry.
It just shows, attraction is always logical from the outside. Sometimes people connect on a level others don't see. And around then, she started acting too.
The Bodyguard. That just shot her into another stratosphere. Global icon status. Already famous for the voice, the beauty, but this made her a movie star. And opposite Kevin Costner, she really held her own, despite no real acting training.
The chemistry was there.
Undeniable. And the soundtrack. Just a monster hit.
Biggest selling soundtrack ever for a movie, which is saying something after her music success.
Right. And I Will Always Love You, taking Dolly Parton's song and just making it epic.
Dolly herself said Whitney made it more beautiful than she ever imagined.
High praise.
But all that success.
Yeah.
Apparently it caused problems in the marriage.
Yeah, reports are that Bobbi felt overshadowed, sidelined, hated being called Mr. Houston.
That must have stung his ego.
Apparently. Led to jealousy and, sadly, attempts to, belittle her or hurt her. And it's around this time that drugs reportedly entered her life.
A really devastating turning point. By most accounts, she wasn't using before Bobbi.
And when someone you love introduces you to something and you enjoy it, that's a dangerous mix, especially if you both maybe have addictive tendencies or difficult pasts.
A recipe for disaster,
Yeah.
as the documentary put it.
Sadly, yeah, they fell into this really destructive codependency.
It seemed like she was almost trying to shrink herself, bring herself down to his level so he wouldn't feel threatened by her fame.
Possibly. They got really isolated, feeling like only they understood each other. Whitney even said, he was my drug.
Wow. And then in '93, after a miscarriage while filming The Bodyguard, Bobbi Kristina was born.
But the drug use apparently just kept escalating. Canceled tours, erratic appearances.
It became obvious something was wrong.
Yeah, to their inner circle, it was clear they were both struggling. Lots of attempts to intervene, but the pattern just continued. That codependency made it so hard to break out.
It's almost eerie how the lyrics of I Have Nothing, even with that huge vocal, kind of reflect that dependence. I have nothing if I don't have you.
Yeah, it sadly seemed to mirror her emotional state then, relying on Bobbi despite being this global superstar, just tragically tangled up.
Exactly. The fame, the money, none of it seemed to matter as much as needing his love.
And after that acting peak, the drug rumors got louder, more public, really started to damage her reputation.
Yeah, missing things like the Rosie O'Donnell show.
Oh.
It just added fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
And while dealing with that, she put out her first studio album in years, My Love Is Your Love.
Right, and that took 8 years. Came out of a really tough personal time. Started as maybe a greatest hits.
But became a full album.
Yeah, working with people like Missy Elliott, Wycliffe, Lauryn Hill. It showed she could still be current, relevant, kind of silenced the critics who thought she was done.
The title track had that reggae feel, different for her.
Yeah, it connected with old fans and new ones. But around then, Robin Crawford apparently made one last try to intervene with Bobbi.
Still looking out for her from afar.
Yeah, reportedly gave Whitney an ultimatum, it's me or Bobbi.
And Whitney's response.
Heartbreaking. Reportedly, tell her I accept her resignation. They didn't speak for years after that. She lost a key support system right when she needed it most.
Oh, that's rough. And then another huge betrayal hit her. Her own father, John Houston.
Yeah, who'd managed her finances for years. He apparently got even more control. And despite her trust, he and others allegedly took huge amounts of money.
Exploited her financially. Her own dad.
It's a truly awful part of the story. After she signed that massive record deal following My Love Is Your Love, his company was reportedly just funneling millions away.
How did she react when she found out?
She cut him off completely. A painful decision, but the betrayal was immense. Many say it just broke her spirit. She apparently didn't see him before he died, barely visited him right at the end.
God, that's heavy. And soon after that came the Diane Sawyer interview in 2002.
Yeah, supposedly to promote the Just Whitney album, but really to address all the rumors about drugs, her marriage.
That interview was something else.
It really was. She tried to be composed, but when Sawyer pushed on crack cocaine, the anger, the defensiveness.
The crack is whack line.
Exactly. I make too much money to ever smoke crack. But her whole manner, kind of disjointed. It suggested something else to a lot of people watching.
And the Just Whitney album itself, that was the first one without Clive Davis really involved, right?
Yeah, and it's often seen as her weakest album. The recording was apparently really difficult. She was isolating herself, struggling to engage.
Just shows how deep the addiction struggles were by then.
Absolutely. Multiple rehab attempts, but it's so hard, especially with a co-addict involved. Success rates for long-term recovery are sadly low, and if your environment reinforces the behavior,
It makes it almost impossible to get clean.
pretty much. And the cycle continued. Bobbi Brown arrested for battery in 2003, assaulting Whitney.
Yet after that, they did the reality show, being Bobbi Brown in 2005.
Baffling, wasn't it? And that show, looking back, it's just deeply uncomfortable. Disturbing scenes, power struggles.
Trainwreck television was the phrase used a lot.
Apt, unfortunately. It got canceled after she refused to do a second season, just drove another wedge between them.
They finally divorced in 2006. It just seemed inevitable by then.
Yeah, the incompatibility, the addiction, it was just too much. The documentary suggests Bobbi couldn't handle being Mr. Houston. He needed her to be Mrs. Brown.
A dynamic that just couldn't work.
Nope. And the biggest tragedy, maybe, was the impact on Bobbi Kristina.
Growing up in that chaos,
Mm.
witnessing drug use, allegedly, raised by parents in denial.
Just an incredibly difficult start to life. So damaging.
But Whitney did try again. Entered a long rehab program, wanted to get better, be a better mom.
Yeah, a 14-week inpatient program. But incredibly, lack of funds apparently stopped her completing it fully.
Money issues for Whitney Houston.
It seems so related to the earlier financial problems. So, against advice, she decided going back to recording and touring was the way forward.
I looked to you in 2009.
The title track felt like a return to her faith.
It did, seeking strength there.
Why?
But by then, her public image was so tied to the drug casualty, reality TV casualty narrative.
It overshadowed the music.
Sadly, yes.
Mm.
The album did okay, but it wasn't the huge comeback maybe some hoped for. And that 2010 comeback tour, that was widely seen as disastrous, wasn't it?
Yeah, reports of erratic shows, breath problems, forgetting lyrics, seeming intoxicated. Fans were really disappointed. Critics were harsh. Videos went viral. It was rough.
But she found some passion again with the Sparkle remake.
Yes.
Oh,
She was
no.
executive producer and starred in it. People on set said she was focused, energized. Even though she'd just come out of rehab again, she apparently loved the process.
And her very last public performance, Jesus Loves Me.
Yeah, spontaneous performance for Kelly Price the day before Kelly's Grammy win, just 2 days before Whitney died. Incredibly poignant now.
Then February 11th, 2012, found unconscious in the bathtub at the Beverly Hilton.
Paramedics couldn't revive her. Official
Yeah.
cause: drowning, with heart disease and cocaine use as contributing factors. Other drugs found too. Ruled an accident.
The shock around the world was immense, losing America's sweetheart like that.
Just disbelief. And then the further tragedy with Bobbi Kristina in 2015, found in a bathtub too, passing away at 22. Just heartbreaking.
Clive Davis said later that Whitney had told him, just before she died, she was determined to get back on track, quit smoking by August.
Shows the battle was still being fought. Such a tragic loss of what might have been.
Whitney's impact, though,
Yeah.
it's undeniable. That voice, that talent.
Unforgettable. The power, the vulnerability, the soul, the elegance. Totally unique. Pop princess to soul icon.
A complex, tragic life, absolutely. But the music endures. Her place is secure.
Definitely. And it's telling, isn't it, what Bobbi Kristina apparently shared? That after shows, Whitney would ask her kind of vulnerably,
Was Mommy okay tonight? Did I sing all right?
yeah, it shows that maybe, despite the superstardom, there was this insecure side that never fully grasped how much she gave the world.
So wrapping up this deep dive, the big takeaway really has to be the complexity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. An extraordinary talent, an extraordinary life, but interwoven with these deep, human, tragic struggles. No easy answers.
You see those recurring themes. Family influence, the insane pressures of fame, the impact of relationships, that constant battle with addiction.
They all shaped her path.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a big question to think about maybe. How do we square the incredible gifts and achievements of someone like Whitney with the very real vulnerabilities and challenges they face?
Yeah, think about the societal pressures, the expectations we put on icons, especially women, especially artists of color, and what kind of support systems are really needed to navigate that kind of intense scrutiny. Something to ponder.